Ciri.
Vaporized.
Loras.
Vaporized.
Lancel.
Vaporized.
Cersei.
Queened.
High Sparrow.
Vaporized!
Are you prepared to stand trial and profess your guilt or innocence before the Seven?
We need to trust each other. We have so many enemies now.
The Freys and the Lannisters send their regards.
What do you want?
I thought you knew what I wanted.
Tell him what you did to her. Tell him!
Are you afraid? Good. You're in the great game now. And the great game's terrifying.
All right. What did you like about that episode, Brian? The season finale.
The whole opening, 25-minute bombage was spectacular.
The bombage.
I loved it. I loved every moment.
The bombs under Baelor.
But yeah, as we've called it. If they're not calling it that by tomorrow morning, then
It is now. That's its name.
I just thought it was so brilliant and so well paced. I mean, it really is a montage. I mean, they're playing music throughout. There are these little, very short scenes, these vignettes, maybe like one line of dialogue,
Like all
or two
these
lines
people
of dialogue.
kind of all over, and you don't quite know how they fit together until it winds
It's
through.
very visual. Mm-hmm. You know, the leading cousin Lancel into the catacombs, and the king like waiting. You know, you see him put on the crown. You see everybody get dressed.
Yeah.
Right. We have those match cuts of everyone putting on their clothing, which is very interesting. How they're all preparing for that day, and then him sitting in the chair and waiting. A lot of shots of him sitting in the chair, not saying anything.
And the shots of Cersei just like staring out at everything, but she's got
putting on this.
She's got this
military
really cool
gear.
military empress type of garb, right?
Yeah.
This chain across the front.
Yeah.
It looks like scale armor, you know, just in its color and in its patterning.
Very aggressive. It was just all about those symbols and conveying information in a way that the show doesn't do all the time. You know, it's not sitting and talking scenes. It's let's just see a day in the life of these people, these moments that they.
But it's like nothing like that at all at the same time, right? Because it's totally building towards something that you anticipate. What we anticipated last episode of Fan versus Fan would happen. So you know that there's this dirty hook at the end of the lure, right? And,
oh my god!
And that's part of the fun of it, right? Is all the simplistic stuff is kind of happening, but you know it's leading to something.
Well, each one builds on the next one. Mm-hmm. We build towards those scenes. We do get those dialogue scenes certainly when. Lancel is or Laura, sorry,
Loras and the High Sparrow
the trial
talking,
is happening, but then they come back to the montage and just builds one layer upon the other.
And for a second,
you get to that moment, like we know this is happening.
And they do it really well by showing those candles too, right? This idea that it is near to unstoppable, right? It's there's an inevitability. It's not like he discovered the cache of bombs. It's like he discovered it and we got second.
Yeah.
Right? And that puts all of that kind of pressure that's been coming with this very off-putting piano theme to start, right? Mm-hmm. You're suddenly like, piano? When does that happen? I haven't heard much piano in the music yet. Yes. It's all drums and string. It's that kind of master criminal type of montage that you'd find in like The Godfather, where there's somebody who has plotted it out, and around the city all of these like pieces of the puzzle are falling into place. And it picks up and leaves them as it goes, and then the payoff is really truly horrifying. I mean, it's one thing to watch. Okay, you know the green fire burns through. The High Sparrow, which is kind of satisfying, and then
that's great.
But then after that, you just kind of see the thing explode, and you just don't hear from 4 named characters ever.
It was so interestingly structured.
Wow,
it's like the end of the third act of a movie. It's like you get to the point where
that's
the point where the bad guys win.
Yeah,
right. And you're sorry, the second act of the movie, the third act of the movie is when the movie ends.
Yeah.
But that point in the movie where just everything goes wrong and it pushes your antagonist into solving it,
right?
But it's the lowest point for everybody. There's a lot of movies that are like that, where they have these montagey moments, like there's a bomb that's going to go off, and they're running to stop it, and they're huddled against a corner, and then we've got to get there. Sort of. It's that sort of scene, but it started the show.
It
starts the show with the worst possible thing for everybody. You do often list those smaller scenes as your most favorite scenes. Mm-hmm. Were there other smaller scenes in this episode that you thought were your pros?
And there were. I mean, we've got a season with almost nothing but bang, bang, big moments. There's lots of character deaths, all of them well done. There's lots of climactic, like, good things that happen to people.
Sure.
Just so strange. I mean, it still feels really weird from last episode when things actually go well. But I really loved the scene between Melisandre and Davos when he comes to confront her about burning Serene. Because to me, it had a lot of acting chops going on between the two actors. Davos was emoting in a way which was very real, very genuine. You knew how much he loved her. There's lots of scenes meant to establish their bond. And just like what you've been liking all season, Melisandre is in this flux situation where she doesn't quite know, and she's like kind of hissing.
She has
her
to
defense.
admit that she doesn't know everything. But she's not all powerful.
She doesn't have her overbearing thing anymore, right? Davos has actually basically defeated her, and for seasons, he was in the dungeons. He was at the mercy of her and her whispering in Stannis' ear, and it's finally kind of come around, and she's cast out, and we know she's not done.
I don't disagree with you on any of those points. I think it was a really well acted scene and a good scene on its own. In general, for scenes throughout the episode, I would probably put it lower on the list of scenes I really enjoyed. Not for the scene itself, but because I felt like it sort of slowed down the episode a little bit for me. That there was so much happening elsewhere, and there's so much sort of proactive, forward-moving decisions and characters being put together. And that was a scene. It was like, well, we got to look back for a moment and sort of tie this loose end off.
Right.
Joel, those were things that we enjoyed. Were there things that you did not enjoy?
We had to kind of scrape it together.
We did. We liked a whole lot of it.
We liked a whole lot of it.
Yeah, it was difficult to find.
But there's always stuff that you can talk about, and because there's scenes that we didn't mention before, we can mention some of them in this capacity.
Sure.
One thing that I was thinking of while I was watching the episode was the premise of kind of just fan service. And last episode touched on this as well, right? We got all these scenes of Jon beating people up and being awesome and doing awesome things. Is that fan service? Well, no, but he got, it's kind of that revenge on Ramsay. It's like people have been waiting to watch that guy go down, and you got to watch him go down, and like adrenaline, and then like it makes you feel good. And so in this episode, the same kind of thing I found in that there's a bunch of stuff where they're clearly almost like they really know what's gonna work, right? Like, and I know that sounds kind of weird, but they film it in a way where I would imagine if somebody came in and watched it who hadn't been following it, they're just watching this one episode. There are certain scenes where they might be like, "Man, that was kind of cheesy. Like that was kind of like ham-fisted and over the top." But us who've been
give me an example.
Who've been brought along for 10 episodes, we're sitting there like this, and we're just like, "Oh yeah, like that's so good." Well, okay. So for example, our little feisty Miss Mormont from Bear Island speaking up, and it's like this little 9-year-old girl tells everyone things. She's amazing. The actress is great.
She should be the leader of the North.
She should be the leader of the North.
She's the most mature, reasonable, well-spoken person that they have.
They can all operate out of Bear Island.
Why not?
It's like it'd be like running America out of Rhode Island.
It's an island of bears.
It's an island of bears. They're tougher than Starks.
Should have loaned some bears to the army.
Yeah. Even kind of Bronn in this episode, it's like the last. He's really funny. That's what people came to the conclusion of, right? Yeah. There's a whole bunch of episodes where
he says twat a lot.
He was. It's the comedy gold.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of episodes before when he wasn't just like some comic relief character. He had important jobs to do as a tough guy as well and things. And this season is very much kind of like so that's what people like, is having him come in and like just giving him the perfect lines. Same with the Hound, right? It's like the perfect lines, and it's not a problem.
It's a difficult line to draw.
It is.
I mean, like Arya is really traveling around the countryside killing people. I mean, that is what she's doing, and that's what I've wanted her to just get to for a while. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but it's I mean, there might be things that I would say is like, yeah, that's probably more fan servicey.
So Brian, what did you not like? I prattled on long enough.
It was hard for me to come up with something. I was so excited by so many things, but the scene that caused me the most pause was the scene where Cersei has Septa Mordain, I believe her name is, strapped to a table, and she's getting a little bit of revenge. Right. She waterboards her temporarily. Wineboards her. And then, tells her that I was the last face you're going to see before you die. So she's like, I'm ready to die. And then the mountain comes in.
Right. She's like, well, I didn't say today.
Not today.
That's too easy.
It's too easy. The mountain comes in, and she says, "This is your god now," and the door closes, and you hear her being treated unpleasantly.
Yes.
Now,
unpleasant treatment.
That's right.
Occurred behind that door.
Now, characters have been raped on the show previously, and there's lots of debate as to whether or not that is appropriate storytelling or not appropriate storytelling. In this moment, I certainly, when it was happening, I thought, is he gonna rape her? Like she's strapped to a table, and you brought in this big guy to, I don't know, it's a world where these terrible things happen.
He has done it before.
Sure. But I didn't feel like there was enough information for me to assume that this is her life now. Right. Or like to be like sexually assaulted by this guy.
And certainly, because my response to it was that it was just physical torture.
Right.
Based on where his hands were, I thought he was just kind of like breaking her fingers.
And Cersei had touched her hand as well when she was wearing.
So, but it is one of those things where it's very much left to.
It's up to your own interpretation, and I sort of didn't like that.
Right.
I would have preferred
something to lean you one way or the other.
Something to lean me one way or the other. I'm not saying that either of those choices are correct necessarily, but both are terrible. But they make me. They also make me feel two different things about what's happening.
Right.
And even though I think I'm leaning towards you, like I feel like, and people can freely disagree, and that's totally fine. I felt like it was, just run-of-the-mill physical torture.
Run-of-the-mill.
Rather than the sexual torture. But I would have liked to get a little something as to what direction it was going.
It's the ambiguity of it.
I didn't like that if that's what they're saying, I didn't like that this is what we're saying is happening to her, but we're going to leave it open to your imagination. I feel like that's too big of a deal for it to be left open to my imagination.
Right.
So I would have preferred we come down one way or the other.
I was surprised to see her again, the Septa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just kind of forgot about her entirely this season.
Sure.
We've
had no reason.
But then you're like, oh, right. Cersei would have a pretty hefty grudge against her.
Yeah.
And she is basically now taken the power. And one of the interesting things, certainly, about that whole part is I'm not sure how many people you would have asked at the start of the episode would have said that, well, everybody's dead and Cersei's on the throne at the end of this one.
Yeah.
There was a lot of... it seemed like she was more on the outs. And I think that's an aspect of good storytelling that we shouldn't be talking about in the con section.
Joel, this was a big episode. Thunderous.
It's the last episode.
Exciting.
It's the last one. This is our last one.
Of this season.
Yeah.
There's clearly more to go.
Yes.
Predictions, my friend. Where's this going? What's happening next season?
Season 7. Well, the main thing is we're finally dwindling characters instead of adding them.
Doesn't it seem like the next one should be the last one? Does it not to you? To me, it does. It feels like we've got all the pieces that we needed, directed in the directions they need to be.
Now, I'm not super up on this. From what I've gathered, there are 2 seasons left, but they are shorter.
Yeah.
They're slightly shorter seasons.
I get that.
So it's still kind of broken into 2 pieces, but
it's still more episodes than in one normal season.
And it's probably going to have so much stuff happening that people are just going to love it, just because there isn't really as much time. As much as I love those tiny scenes, we're running out of time for those. Everything is coming down to a point. There is Lannisters in King's Landing, what's left of it. There are Targaryens and Dornish and Iron Island folk coming across the ocean. And you got Starks and Vale people and Hill people from way up north in the north.
Oceans are big, but you can't have Dany spending the next 5 episodes on a boat being seasick, waiting for land to show up on the horizon.
No,
you've got to open on the season and then get it going.
Well, there's still the Greyjoy fleet, so that'll be something because it'll show up and get destroyed, and then that's at least an episode hold up on Dany's march to the throne,
naval battle.
But the really interesting stuff is just that you're getting down to the key families. And I think that's one of the most important things, right? Is that the other smaller ones have tossed their lot in with the bigger houses, right? We know Dorne is with the Targaryens, and so are the Greyjoys, and the Starks and the members of the Vale are now together, and things are all piecing into these larger factions.
Yeah.
And we're only being left with central characters. And one of the most important things going on is going to be that big reveal that they did in the middle of the episode. Yet another moment that could have ended the episode entirely.
Yeah.
Which was when they were in the Tower of Joy in Bran's flashback watching the birth of Jon Snow. It was really amazing that in the very first episode he's heading up to the wall, and his father is heading south, and he's like, next time I see you, son, I'll tell you about your parents, I promise. Like, he basically says, I'll tell you about your mother.
Yeah.
Like, this has been planned forever.
Yeah.
And this is the value and the power of creating something from a quality book series that has had a lot of work and time and brain cells put into it, in that you're not making it up as you go along, like a typical TV show where they don't know if they're going to be renewed next season.
Yeah.
It's like, in Game of Thrones sense, they don't know either, but they've got all this stuff stretching way into the future, whether they like it or not. And but because it's done so well, it's allowed them to reach the far-reaching things that have been cast forward from as far as the very first episode. And of course, the fact that Jon is on both teams is probably going to be essential to merging the two sides. So that's all the time we have for the final Fan versus Fan for Game of Thrones. This was for episode 610, and we are entirely done. Brian and I, he's Brian, I'm not going to let him talk, I'm Joel. We are done for the season. We will be back next season with season 7. It's going to be amazing. In the meantime, you can catch Fan vs. Fan for the show The Flash starting in the fall. And there's all sorts of other stuff going on with Dork Shelf every day of the week, probably, if you check in. It's wonderful. The season that we have right now for Fan vs. Fan has 10 episodes. So if you want, snoop around, find them all, watch them in reverse order, see if it plays some sort of creepy message like those old records people say, or just watch them in the regular order, see if it plays some sort of creepy message just live, because it's just us being creepy. All of the stuff for each episode between Brian and I, what we thought, what we liked, what we didn't like, it's all there. And in the meantime, if you want to get all of this, you have to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can do that by clicking this fancy box.
Or you can subscribe to the Twitter channel too.
They didn't let him talk, so this is all he got.
I forgot how to do it.
He forgot. He just went numb.
I forgot how to say the words.
I hood-ordered him. I'm Joel Minty.
I'm Brian Crosby.
We'll see you next year.
Goodbye.
Kicked him out.